They've done it. They've finally done it. After nearly 2 decades of injuries, heartbreak, and just falling short, the Boston Celtics have finally done it again and won their 18th championship in franchise history, which of course means that they now are back in the lead across the entire NBA in terms of championships won by a franchise, the only team even close being the Lakers, who they just broke their tie with at 17. And the reason why I'm saying finally is because, this has been a long time coming. Like, Celtics fans have been waiting for this moment pretty much since 2010, but between injuries to the Boston Celtics Big Three back then and just the formation of the Big Three in Miami, it was a while before they really even got a chance to get back into contention again. And even then, more heartbreak and issues plagued them in the years to follow, with the glaring chemistry problems that arose with the Celtics in the 2019 season, mainly involving Kyrie Irving. Their hopes then pretty much fell apart. 2020, the Miami Heat were just on a crazy run that year and were clearly the better team. 21, Jaylen Brown would get injured towards the end of the year and miss the entire playoffs. 22, losing to Golden State after being up 2-1 in the finals. And 23, losing to the Miami Heat in a series which the result does not accurately showcase how outmatched they actually were, even though they were facing the 8th seed. All of that has come to this. And not only did they finally win their championship, they did so in historic fashion, because throughout the season, we've been talking about the Celtics and what exactly they've been doing to every team throughout the league, and it was pretty apparent from about the first 2 months that there was not going to be a lot of teams, if any, that were going to be able to keep up with them come playoff time. And even though they did have somewhat of an easy run up until the finals, it's still true. Throughout the regular season, the Boston Celtics had by far the best offensive rating in the league, with an offensive rating of 122.2, which is almost 2 points better than Indiana, who was in second place, and almost 4 points better than the OKC Thunder, who were in third. In terms of defense, they finished with a defensive rating of 110.6, which put them at second in the league behind only the Minnesota Timberwolves, and that adds up to a total net rating of plus 11.7, which in terms of any team throughout history, not just title teams, any team throughout history, that was the 3rd best net rating in NBA history. The only 2 teams ahead of them being the 96 Bulls and the 97 Bulls. That's it. And they barely beat out the famous or infamous 2017 Warriors, who had a net rating of plus 11.6. And it's mainly due to how they responded to all those disappointments of the past, because during the 2022 season, they were pretty mediocre. They were under 500 halfway through the season before putting an emphasis on defense for the second half of the year, and also making a move at the trade deadline that would change their team for the foreseeable future. Because at the 2022 deadline, the Boston Celtics would trade Josh Richardson, Romeo Langford, and a first-round pick to the San Antonio Spurs and got back Derek White, who was a pretty good 3-and-D player at the time, but this season has been absolutely just unreal on both ends of the court. Not only has he become an even better shooter than he was last season, but defensively he took a noticeable leap to the point where he is now an all-NBA level defender. And not just on the perimeter, he averaged over 1 block per game, which ranks top 20 in the entire NBA, and he did that as a guard. But going back to the 2023 offseason, there were a bunch of questions surrounding this team, especially after their loss to the Miami Heat in the Eastern Conference Finals, who, as I said before, were the 8th seed and held a 3-0 lead on them at one point during the series. And even though, yes, they still came back and were able to force a Game 7, the fact that they were down 3-0 to begin with was enough cause for concern for a bunch of fans. And more questions were being asked about if the duo of Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown would actually be able to coexist, at least on a championship roster. And so it became clear with the first move that the Celtics were willing to do anything to win a championship. Trading away fan favorite and 2022 Defensive Player of the Year Marcus Smart was very insane when it originally happened, because it's something that nobody ever expected. Someone who was pretty instrumental and one of the longest tenured Celtics on this specific roster, and someone who pretty much everybody expected would be on any future Celtics championship roster that they would be able to put put together, but instead, they would ship him out in a 3-team deal involving the Memphis Grizzlies and the Washington Wizards, and in return, they would get back Kristaps Porzingis, who was sort of working to revitalize his career after being traded by Dallas midway through the 2022 season. So that was number one. But something else would happen that not only did nobody see coming, we had no idea that this would be one of the main moves that would lead to the Celtics being in the position that they are right now. The Milwaukee Bucks trading for Damian Lillard. Milwaukee was not even on anybody's radar in the 2023 offseason in terms of the Damian Lillard sweepstakes. We were mainly talking about Miami. And so when this happened, everybody was pretty shocked. Now, this has always been one of the most interesting roster changes in recent memory to me, because we need to remember that the Celtics were about to come into training camp without a starting level point guard. They had traded away Marcus Smart and they hadn't made any meaningful moves to fill that position afterwards. All of this happened a week before training camp. Going from that to now all of a sudden being able to trade for Drew Holiday is one of those things that just every championship team needs. Championship teams usually need a combination of health, luck, and just everything to fall into place at the same time. And that's what this was. Drew Holiday becomes a Boston Celtic, and they get off of the contracts of both Malcolm Brogdon and Robert Williams, who were injury prone even leading up to that offseason, and even more so after they had been traded. They barely played any games combined this season. So combining those deals with the improvement of Derek White, the improvement of Jaylen Brown, and just what they were actually able to do on both ends of the court given their personnel, because there hasn't really been an instance in NBA history where you have great defenders 1 through 5 who can also space out the floor. We hear the term 5-out offense all the time, especially now in the modern NBA where every team is shooting threes, every player is shooting threes, but I feel like this was the absolute peak of 5-out offense as we know it, at least up until this point. There could always be a better team sometime in the future, but this is the best instance that we've seen of this happening. Having guys like Kristaps Porzingis being able to space out to 30 feet has dramatically shifted defenses the entire year, because usually, even if teams have bigs that can shoot and kind of match this, they usually aren't as mobile to be able to space out this far and still be able to recover back and protect the rim. Not only can the Celtics do this, but they also have just length from 1 through 5 as well. Even 1 through 4, not even including Porzingis. You have Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, who are 6'8" and 6'7" respectively, and then you have Derek White and Drew Holiday, who aren't as tall, they're 6'5", but are able to cover a lot more ground and be able to provide some level of rim protection even as guards. Drew Holiday has been doing this for years. Derek White has mainly started doing it this season, and there haven't been a lot of teams that have been able to counter this. I imagine that sometime within the near future, teams will start to catch up, but even then, being able to have all of these guys on the same roster is something that we might never see again, at least not at this level, because you have basically what can be considered to be 4 or 5 all defense level players in your starting lineup. Even with the attempts that are going to be made to try to copy this team, you might never see that again. And even then, with the Celtics team, you might never see them with this again, given the contract situations that they're about to be put in, which, I mean, we can talk about later because this is their time. Like, they finally did it. The talks about Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown and, you know, them being on the clock to win a championship are finally over, and that should be the end of the conversation, at least right now, because as I said before, not only did they do it, they did it in one of the most dominant seasons that we have ever seen, and so they deserve all their credit in the world. Drew Holiday is a 2-time champion, which I absolutely love. Always loved Drew Holiday. Al Horford is finally a champion. We can finally take him out of this crazy John Stockton, Karl Malone conversation in terms of games played with no rings. And Kristaps Porzingis, after everything that he's been through in his career, is now an NBA champion. A lot of fans won't be happy for the Celtics winning the championship, but I can say that I'm pretty happy for those dudes specifically for finally being able to get one, especially Al Horford, who is 38, turning 39 years old on his way out. Salute. But there's been a lot of positivity in this video, so I'm gonna balance it out right here. One last thing I wanted to say is that we probably all have to thank the 2023 Miami Heat for everything that happened in the last year. When you really think about it, them making the playoffs, beating the Bucks in the first round, beating the Celtics in the conference finals, and forcing both of their front offices to make massive changes puts us in the position that we are right now. So, Laker fans, anybody else that hates the Celtics, which is a lot of people, last year's Heat team, it is all their fault. But with all that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Subscribe if you're new, hit the bell to be notified when I upload, comment down below what you want to see next, and as always, I'll see you guys in the next one.